It started with a name I hadn't heard in years. We were finishing dinner, just the two of us. Thursday night, chicken stir-fry and a bottle of Pinot Noir. I was halfway through rinsing the dishes when she said it. Derek's in town. I didn't turn right away, just stared at the running water, letting the steam blur my reflection in the kitchen window. Derek, I asked casually, drying my hands. She nodded. Yeah. He texted out of nowhere. Said he was passing through for work. Her tone was light, like she'd mentioned an old classmate or someone she once bumped into at a gas station. But Derek wasn't that. Derek was him. The ex. The only one I ever really thought twice about. You gonna see him? I asked. She hesitated a beat too long. We're just grabbing lunch tomorrow. Nothing weird. Nothing weird. I gave a slow nod and walked past her to grab my phone from the counter. She didn't say more. Just sipped her wine. Eyes on the TV, like it wasn't worth a second thought. But I thought about it. All night. I wasn't the jealous type. I didn't believe in reading too deep into things without cause. But Derek was different. He wasn't just a chapter from her past. He was the almost. The one she almost married, almost moved states for. The one she once told me broke her so bad it changed the way she loved. Or maybe, more truthfully, who she let herself love. I asked her once why they ended. Years ago when we were still dating. She said, he was reckless. All passion. No roots. He made me feel alive, but never safe. I guess I was the safe one. The next morning, she left early. Said she wanted to squeeze in a workout before meeting him. She wore makeup. Not a lot. Just enough to notice. A touch of blush. Gloss. She hadn't put in that much effort for lunch with a friend in a long time. Where are you meeting? I asked as she grabbed her keys. Downtown. That little bistro on Park. She kissed my cheek and was out the door before I could respond. I stood there in the hallway, staring at the front door for a long time. Then I opened her closet. I wasn't sure what I was looking for. Maybe nothing. Maybe just proof that this nagging feeling wasn't all in my head. What I found didn't make sense. A jacket. Black leather, clearly not hers. Slightly worn. Faint cologne still clinging to the collar. I pulled it out and turned it over in my hands. I'd never seen it before. Not in our home. Not on anyone we knew. It wasn't mine. That much was obvious. And then I remembered something she'd said years ago, when we were still figuring each other out. Derek had this stupid leather jacket he wore everywhere, even in summer. Thought it made him look tough. I held the jacket tighter. My stomach sank. I placed it back on the hanger exactly how I found it. Stepped out of the room like I hadn't seen a damn thing. My mind was spinning in all directions, trying to make sense of it. Why would his jacket be here? Why would it be in our home? Our bedroom? Was he here already? Had he been here before? I checked the garage. No sign. No extra shoes at the door. No beer bottles in the trash or unfamiliar car outside. But the scent was there. Lingering. That cologne. Sharp. Musky. Not mine. Not hers. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the open closet door. Something had shifted in the air. Something I couldn't name yet. But it was there. Undeniable. She came back around 3 p.m., smiling, relaxed, like she'd just caught up with an old college friend, not invited a ghost into our marriage. How was lunch? I asked, voice calm. She shrugged. Good. We talked about work, his new job, just catching up. That's good, I said, watching her move past me. You didn't forget anything while he was here, did you? She stopped mid-step. What do you mean? I stood. Slowly. I found a jacket in the closet. She blinked. What jacket? Don't play dumb. Lauren. It's his, isn't it? She opened her mouth, and then she closed it. That told me everything I needed to know. For a moment, she just stood there, frozen, like her brain was doing damage control in real time. I watched her eyes shift left, then right, as if the right line might be hiding somewhere in the room. But nothing came. No quick denial. No outrage. Just a faint swallow and the tension building in her shoulders. I was going to tell you, she said finally. That was her opening move. I gave a slow nod, crossing my arms. Tell me what, Lauren? That you invited your ex into our house? That he left his jacket in our bedroom closet like it belongs there? She exhaled, hands lifting slightly. He didn't stay. It's not what you think. Really? Then help me out. Because I'm having a hard time figuring out what version of lunch with an old friend ends with his clothes in my closet. She sat down on the arm of the couch, like her legs suddenly weighed too much. He came by last week. Last week. My voice stayed low, but it came out tighter. So before you even told me he was in town? She nodded. Unbelievable. He texted me out of nowhere. She rushed. Said he was driving through and asked if we could talk. Just catch up. I didn't plan it. But you didn't stop it either. Her lips parted, but no words came. I stepped closer. Not to intimidate, just to make it impossible for her to hide behind distance. Was he here alone? She nodded. Did you two hook up? She flinched at the question, which was answer enough. But I needed to hear it. Yes or no? Lauren. She hesitated. And then, it just happened. I closed my eyes, jaw tight. The phrase every cheater leans on. It just happened. Like gravity pulled their clothes off. Like betrayal is some spontaneous chemical reaction that doesn't involve choices, patterns, or intent. How long? I asked. Just that once, she whispered. Last week, before I told you he was in town. I swear. I looked at her for a long time, the room stretching between us like a canyon. I want you to pack a bag, I said. Her eyes widened. Cole, please, go to Rachel's. Or your mom's. Or a hotel. I don't care. But I don't want to see you here tonight. This is still my house, so. No, I interrupted. This was our house. Until you invited someone else into it. Now you can stay wherever it is you left your self-respect. She blinked hard, tears forming, but I didn't move. I didn't reach for her. I didn't soften my voice. I'll give you an hour, I said. After that, I'll start throwing things on the lawn. She stood, clearly stunned. I wasn't begging for a better story. But she didn't argue. Maybe she knew it would only make it worse. She went upstairs. I sat at the kitchen table, listening to the dull thump of her footsteps as she moved through the bedroom, down the hall, into the guest bathroom. The sound of drawers opening and zippers being yanked shut. No music, no conversation, just the raw silence of consequence. 28 minutes later, she walked out with a duffel bag in one hand and her phone in the other. I'll call you tomorrow, she said quietly. We need to talk about this. I didn't answer. She waited, and when she realized no response was coming, she stepped outside and closed the door behind her. The silence that followed was immediate and full. I walked upstairs. The jacket was still hanging in the closet. I pulled it down, stared at it for a moment, then carried it out to the garage. It didn't belong here, and honestly, neither did she anymore. I wasn't sure what came next. Counseling? Divorce? Weeks of silence and then more pain? But I knew one thing. You don't get to burn the bridge and still expect the other person to meet you halfway. The next morning, the house felt unnaturally still. No running shower. No blow dryer humming in the hallway. No scent of her coconut shampoo drifting from the bathroom or the clink of her ring against her coffee mug. It was just me and the silence. And for the first time in years, I didn't mind it. I made my own breakfast. 2 eggs, bacon, toast, black coffee. Sat down at the table where we usually ate together. Her chair was empty. I didn't move it. Didn't push it in. I left it right where she used to sit. A reminder. Halfway through my meal, my phone buzzed. It was her. Can we talk today? I'm sorry. I didn't mean for any of this to happen. I stared at the message for a full minute before locking my screen and finishing my toast. I wasn't going to reply. Not yet. She wanted the chance to fix it with words. But I wasn't sure there was anything left for words to fix. By noon, I found myself pacing the living room, my mind flipping between anger and cold detachment. I wanted to scream. I wanted to disappear. I wanted to rewind time. But none of those things were options, and I was tired of living in fantasy. So I pulled open her drawer in the hallway console, the one she always kept locked. The key had been on her ring, which she took. But the drawer wasn't complicated. Just a cheap lock, easy to pry open with a flathead screwdriver. A second later, it popped. Inside, there wasn't much. A few old cards, some pictures from her college days, and a small stack of printed emails. I didn't expect the emails. They were from Derek, all dated over the last 6 months. Some were short, updates about his job, where he was traveling. Others were longer, emotional, raw. I've never stopped wondering about you. I hated the way we ended. You were the only woman who ever truly saw me. Sometimes I drive through your town just to feel close to what I lost. And her replies? They weren't distant. They weren't platonic. I think about you more than I should. Things at home are quiet. Too quiet. Sometimes I wonder if we let go too early. I let out a slow breath, my fingers tightening around the paper. This wasn't a moment of weakness like she claimed. It was a build-up. A long, drawn-out betrayal dressed up as nostalgia. This wasn't an accident. It was a carefully lit fuse. My phone buzzed again. I know you're angry. I know I deserve it. Please just give me a chance to explain everything. Everything. She already had. She just didn't realize I'd read the full script. I texted back 2 words. Come by. She arrived within an hour. No makeup, hair tied up, wearing an old hoodie and jeans like she was trying to look small. Harmless. Familiar. Like she was walking into a house she still believed was half hers. She stepped inside cautiously. I didn't bring anything, she said quietly. No bags. No pressure. I nodded, motioned toward the living room. Sit. She did. I stood across from her. Didn't sit. Didn't offer tea or small talk. I found the emails. Her shoulders sagged. She didn't even try to deny it. So it wasn't just last week, I said. It's been going on for months. It wasn't physical, she said quickly. Not until that one day. That doesn't make it better. I know. I held up the stack of printed emails. You weren't just catching up with an old friend, Lauren. You were rehearsing an escape plan. She wiped her eyes. I didn't mean to hurt you. You didn't just hurt me. You humiliated me. In my own house. You took something I built with you, trust, history, and handed it to someone who already dropped it once. She covered her face with her hands. I don't know what I want, she whispered. Then I'll make it easy for you, I said. I want a break. A real one. No calls. No texts. I need space to decide if there's anything left here worth saving. She nodded, tears slipping through her fingers. I'm sorry, she said again, but apologies are cheap when they're made at rock bottom. I walked her to the door. And this time, I didn't watch her drive away. I just closed it behind her, locked it, and leaned back against the silence. The first 3 days after I told her to stay away were the hardest. Not because I missed her, but because my mind wouldn't stop asking why. Why did she answer his text? Why didn't she shut it down when it started creeping into dangerous territory? Why did she let someone she once called reckless walk back into her life and unravel everything we built? I didn't text her, didn't call. I turned off read receipts and muted her number. I needed the mental silence, the emotional break, every sound that used to come from her, keys dropping in the bowl, the shower turning on, the soft murmur of her voice at night. All of it had been replaced by a hum of numb clarity. On the 4th day, Nate dropped by. He didn't say much when I opened the door, just gave me that look, the kind only brothers know how to give, then walked inside like he owned the place. 2 coffees in hand. So, he said, setting one down in front of me. You gonna tell me what's been eating you? Or do I gotta guess? I told him. The whole thing. The jacket. The emails. The lie about lunch. The "it just happened" garbage line that still rang in my ears. He didn't interrupt once. Just sat there, jaw tight, nodding like each detail only confirmed what he already suspected. I always thought she was a little too sentimental about her past, he finally said. But I didn't think she'd go this far. Neither did I. You thinking divorce? I shrugged. I don't know yet. You still love her? I didn't answer right away. Because the truth is, love doesn't just die in a day. It rots slowly, peels back layer after layer until one morning you realize it's not love anymore. It's muscle memory, habit, a reflex that feels like care but functions on survival. I don't know what I love anymore, I admitted. He nodded, then stood. You've got time. Don't let her guilt rush you. After he left, I found myself back in the closet. The jacket was gone. I had moved it to the garage last week, but the space it had left still stared at me like a scar. I ran my hand along the hangers, each one holding pieces of a life that felt increasingly borrowed. Then I opened the drawer under her side of the bed. Another photo album, one I hadn't looked at in years. It was from our honeymoon, coastal Oregon, foggy mornings and quiet beaches. I flipped through it, page by page. She looked younger in those photos. Brighter. So did I. Back then, we held hands just to fill the space between us. One photo caught me off guard. She was sitting on a rock, wrapped in a blanket, barefoot. I had just made a joke. I remembered because she was mid-laugh when I snapped it. Not smiling. Laughing. Eyes closed, head back. I stared at that version of her for a long time. And I wondered if she ever thought about that woman when she opened Derek's messages. That night, I wrote her a letter. I didn't send it. I wasn't ready, but I needed to get it out. You didn't just cheat on me. You cheated on us. On every morning I made you coffee, on every late-night grocery run, on every time I held my tongue so you could feel heard. You didn't just open the door to someone else. You closed the door on the man who never stopped showing up for you, even when you were halfway out the door. I don't know if I'll ever forgive you, but I hope you learn what real love looks like the next time it stares you in the face. And I hope you don't flinch. I folded it, placed it in the same drawer, and I slept soundly for the first time in weeks. A week passed, then another. No calls. No texts. The silence was intentional, and I appreciated that. Whether she meant it as respect or fear, I didn't know. But I wasn't in a place to ask, and she wasn't in a position to answer. For the first time since the day everything unraveled, I started feeling like a man with both feet under him again. I kept myself busy. Repairs around the house I'd put off, repainting the garage door, reorganizing the tools in the shed. Something about physical labor helped. Gave the mind something to do besides wander back into that night, into that conversation, into the image of Derek's jacket hanging where mine used to. Still, the ghost of her lingered in the quiet. Her keys weren't in the bowl by the door. Her shoes weren't next to mine in the mudroom. Her voice didn't echo from the hallway when I came home from work. But her memory, her scent, her habits, the way she used to hum under her breath while brushing her hair, those things stayed. And then one afternoon, she broke the silence. I was pulling weeds in the front yard, sweat soaking through the back of my shirt, when I saw her car ease into the driveway. She parked slowly, as if unsure she had the right to stop. She got out. No bag, no clipboard of apologies. Just herself, in jeans and a black t-shirt, hair tied back, hands empty. "I know I shouldn't be here," she said. I stood, didn't wave, didn't move toward her. Just waited. "I needed to talk to you. Just 5 minutes. That's all." I considered walking back inside, letting the silence continue. But something told me this wasn't the kind of thing you put off. This was one of those moments that begged to be heard, whether you wanted to or not. "All right," I said. 5 minutes. She stepped closer, but didn't try to come inside. "I've been in therapy," she started, voice quiet. "Not to win you back, just to figure out why I keep doing this. Why I self-destruct." I stayed quiet. "I've talked a lot about us. About how I let someone from my past dictate the choices I made in the present. How I confused familiarity with comfort." Still quiet. "I don't expect forgiveness. But I want to take responsibility for more than just the act. I want you to know that I see it now. All of it. What I broke. What I lost." She paused, eyes glassy, but not crying. "You were always steady. And I used that steadiness as an excuse to drift. I thought being loved unconditionally meant I could test that love, even betray it." I swallowed hard. "And now I know better." There was a long silence between us. The kind that says more than words ever could. Finally, I nodded. "Thanks for saying it," I said. "But I'm not ready to give you anything more than that." "I understand." She started to turn, then stopped. "There's one more thing." I raised an eyebrow. "I told Derek to never contact me again. Blocked his number. Deleted every trace." I didn't react. "I did it for me, not for you. But I wanted you to know." She turned and walked back to her car. Got in, didn't rush, didn't wait for a reaction. Just drove off. And I stood there, sun beating down, breath tight in my chest. Not from pain, but from the strange calm that followed truth. She didn't ask to come back, and I didn't ask her to stay gone. But something had shifted. Not a reconciliation, not a second chance. Just the first moment where maybe we were finally standing in the same reality. The days that followed her visit were quieter than before, but not in a heavy way. This silence had shape to it. Definition. It wasn't the fog of betrayal anymore. It was the stillness that comes after the storm passes, when you're finally able to see what's left standing. And strangely, a lot was. The house hadn't crumbled. I hadn't either. I thought I'd feel more broken, more hollow. But instead, I was just aware. Aware of how much energy I used to waste wondering where she was, what her messages meant, why her laughter sometimes felt like it wasn't meant for me. That guessing game was over now, and the peace that came with it was the kind you don't question, you just let it settle in. On Sunday morning, I opened the drawer beside our bed. The letter I'd written her sat there, untouched since the night I folded it. I read it again. Still rang true. But for the first time, I felt like I didn't need to send it. Because it wasn't about whether she read those words. It was about the fact that I had, and that I meant them. By noon, I found myself cleaning out the rest of her things. Not out of spite, just closure. Her makeup bag under the sink. Her scarves tucked in the back of the hallway closet. A box of cards and small notes she'd written over the years. Most of them sweet. Some of them apologies for fights that seem stupid now. I boxed everything carefully, taped it up, labeled it in bold black marker. Lauren. I didn't tell her to come get it. Not yet. But I wanted it gone. The house needed to breathe. That afternoon, Nate called again. "How's the ghost removal going?" he asked. I smirked. "Almost done." "You talked to her?" "She stopped by. Gave her speech. And I listened." He paused. "You planning on letting her back in?" I didn't answer right away. Instead, I glanced out the window, where the late afternoon light was slanting through the porch screens. "I don't know if there's a back end to go to," I said. "I don't miss who she became, but I'm not sure I miss who we were either. That's the trick," Nate said. "Sometimes you mourn what you thought it was, not what it really was." Later that evening, I went for a walk. No headphones, no distractions, just the sound of my boots on pavement, birds overhead, and the low hum of streetlights warming up for the night. A few blocks down, I passed a park bench and sat for a while, letting the cool breeze wash over me. That's when I saw Eva again. We'd met once, briefly, at Nate's barbecue. She worked with him in his office, quiet, sharp, not flashy. She smiled when she noticed me sitting there. "Twice in one lifetime," she said, stopping. "Must be fate." She laughed softly and sat down beside me. Not too close. Just close enough to feel like the moment belonged to both of us. "You look different," she said after a few minutes. "Older, lighter." We talked for half an hour. About nothing in particular, books, dogs, coffee shops in town we both hated for different reasons. She never asked about Lauren. I never brought it up. It wasn't flirting. It was normal. And right now, normal felt extraordinary. When I got home, I stood in the doorway for a while, just looking around. The house didn't feel like a shell anymore. It felt like a place that was finally mine. And though the pain wasn't gone, it wasn't holding the pin anymore. That part belonged to me now. The following week passed in a blur. I kept to myself more than I expected. The house felt like a space I was still claiming. Every corner and piece of furniture a quiet reminder that I was rebuilding. I didn't rush it. I didn't even really want to rush it. Every morning felt like a small victory, just waking up in the place I chose, not the place I was trying to fix. By the weekend, I'd almost stopped looking over my shoulder, waiting for her to walk back in. Almost. Nate kept checking in. Nothing too personal. Just the usual. How you doing? Or got plans tonight? I'd answer. We'd talk. But there were always these quiet moments in between. Moments that made me realize how much I was still trying to figure out what came next. It was that Saturday when I saw her again. I was at the hardware store, picking up supplies to fix a leak under the sink, when I turned down an aisle and saw Lauren standing at the end of it. She didn't see me at first. She was crouched down, looking at a display of power tools like she was considering buying something. I had a split second to turn and walk away before she turned around. But I didn't move. She looked up. Her eyes caught mine immediately. For a second, her face softened, then hardened, then softened again, like she couldn't decide how to feel about the person standing in front of her. Hey, she said. Her voice was steady, but there was something fragile behind it, like it could break at the slightest pressure. Hey, I said back, my voice neutral. The words hung between us, both too familiar and yet too foreign at the same time. I didn't expect to run into you here, she said, a little too quickly. I didn't expect to run into you, period. Her eyes dropped to the floor. I know this is awkward. I don't want to make it worse. I stayed silent. I didn't need to make it worse. She already had. She began, then stopped herself. I just wanted to know if we could talk. Really talk. Not about us. Not about what happened. Just about us as people. I couldn't stop myself from laughing soft, bitter. You really think we can go back to that? She stepped back, like I'd slapped her. But I didn't care. It wasn't anger. It was just the truth. The kind you can't hide from anymore. I just wanted some closure, Cole, she said, her voice trembling. I don't want us to hate each other forever. You already killed that chance, I said, shrugging. Closure doesn't come in a meeting at a hardware store. It comes with actions. Real ones. I've been trying. I swear I have. Trying to make things right? Or trying to make yourself feel better? The question hung in the air, suspended between us. She didn't answer. She didn't have to. We stood there in the aisle, two strangers with too much history and not enough time to fix it. She looked at me like she wanted to say more, but the words were gone, buried under the weight of the last few months. I should go, she said finally. I just wanted you to know I'm sorry for what I did and for dragging you through it. I nodded once. I know. She started to turn, but paused. Maybe. One day we can just... Her voice trailed off, and she shook her head. Never mind. It's not worth it. She walked away then, her steps echoing faintly in the store. I didn't watch her leave. I didn't turn around. I just stayed there, staring at the shelf of paint samples like they held the answers I needed. And maybe they did. Not because I'd fixed everything with one conversation, but because I finally understood that closure isn't something someone else gives you. It's something you take for yourself. I grabbed the supplies and checked out. The rest of the day passed without incident. I fixed the leak under the sink, took a long walk, played a round of golf with Nate. We talked about random stuff, nothing too deep, nothing that mattered. But when I came home, the house didn't feel empty anymore. It felt like mine. For the first time in a long time, the silence wasn't a burden. It was a reprieve. I poured a drink and stood by the window, looking out at the backyard. I didn't know what the future looked like, but for the first time in a long time, I didn't need to. The days after our chance encounter in the hardware store felt strange. Like I was trying to live in two worlds at once. The one where my marriage had crumbled, and the one where I still tried to carry on as if nothing had changed. I kept waiting for the moment when everything would click back into place, as if the silence between us could be filled with the right words. But as the days dragged on, I realized something. I had already said everything I needed to say, and so had she. The conversation at the store, as awkward as it was, had been the final punctuation on the end of a chapter one couldn't unwrite. Nate had been pushing me to get out more. It wasn't his fault. He could see how much I was holding on to the past. But every time I thought about leaving the house, about picking up the pieces and moving forward, I felt that familiar weight in my chest, that moment of hesitation. I wasn't ready. Not yet. One evening, after another long day of aimlessly working on random projects around the house, I found myself sitting at the kitchen table, staring out the window at the dusky sky. My phone buzzed on the counter, snapping me from my thoughts. I didn't even look at the screen. It buzzed again. Then again. Reluctantly, I reached over and grabbed it. It was a text from Lauren. Can we talk again? I swear, I'm not asking for anything, just, I need you to understand. Please. I stared at the message for a long moment, chewing over the words. I had no intention of answering her at first. It wasn't because I hated her. It wasn't because I wanted to drag things out. I was simply tired of the emotional ping-pong. 1 minute, I felt like I was making progress. The next, I'd be faced with another reminder of what I lost. I typed out a response. Slowly, carefully, not angry, just factual. I think we've said enough. I hit send, and the weight on my chest lightened just a little bit. I wasn't closing the door completely. I was just choosing not to walk back through it. As the night wore on, I began to feel that familiar sense of detachment again, the peace I'd been working toward. It wasn't that I didn't care. It wasn't that I didn't feel the sting of everything she had done. It was simply that I was no longer waiting for closure from her. I had already found it for myself. Around 9 p.m., my phone buzzed again. It wasn't Lauren this time. It was Eva. Hey, it's Eva. I hope I'm not catching you at a bad time. I was thinking we could grab coffee this week if you're free. I read the message over a few times, my thumb hovering over the reply button. I hadn't seen her since that afternoon in the park, but something about her felt different. Her presence didn't feel like pressure. It didn't feel like expectation. It felt like a simple offer of connection. I thought about it for a moment. Then, without overthinking it, I typed back. Yeah, I'd like that. How about Thursday? The response came quickly. Perfect. Let me know what time works for you. I didn't expect it to feel like a weight was lifting, but it did. The next morning, I woke up early, something I hadn't done in weeks. The house was quiet, just the soft hum of the refrigerator and the distant sound of birds outside. I made coffee and sat by the window, looking out at the yard as the morning light spilled over the grass. I didn't have anywhere I had to be. No meetings, no appointments, no distractions. Just a moment of peace before the world woke up. For the first time in a long time, I felt okay. Not happy, necessarily. Not healed, but okay. And that was enough for now. Thursday came, and I met Eva at a small cafe downtown. She was already sitting at a table by the window, sipping on a latte. She looked relaxed, her usual calm demeanor still in place. No pressure, no game, just two people having coffee. Have you been? She asked when I sat down. I shrugged. Good. Busy. She smiled, like she understood that wasn't the full answer. Busy with what? She pressed gently, her voice warm but not intrusive. Just life, I said, trying to figure it out. She nodded and took a sip of her drink, letting the silence linger comfortably between us. It wasn't uncomfortable. It wasn't full of unspoken tension. It was simply two people in the middle of figuring out what they needed. And for the first time in a long time, I realized I didn't need to fill the space with words. We talked for a while about nothing in particular: books, places we'd been, old restaurants in town. But somehow, it was the most relaxed I had felt in months. I wasn't thinking about my past or about Lauren. I wasn't even thinking about the future. I was simply existing in the moment. When we finished, we stood to leave. Eva looked at me, her expression open. Thanks for meeting up, she said, her tone casual. But there was something else in her eyes, something unspoken. She wasn't pushing for anything, just offering connection, as simple as that. Of course, I said, smiling. I needed this. And for the first time since everything fell apart, I realized that sometimes, moving forward isn't about fixing everything you've broken. It's about simply accepting that the pieces left behind might still be worth something. The week after meeting Eva was quieter. No phone calls from Lauren, no surprise visits, no emotional explosions. Just me, my routine, and the strange peace that I didn't know I needed. It was a slow change. I didn't wake up one morning and feel like a different person. It wasn't some grand revelation. It was just a gradual shift, like the earth turning quietly underfoot, until one day you realize you're standing in a completely different place than where you started. By Friday, I was feeling good enough to walk around town without my usual sense of dragging chains behind me. The weight of the past few months, though not gone, was no longer suffocating. I'd gotten back into the rhythm of my life. It wasn't perfect. I still caught myself thinking about Lauren occasionally, wondering how she was, what she was doing, if she regretted what she'd done. But those thoughts came less often, and when they didn't last long. I was at the coffee shop that morning, sitting by the window with my usual order, a black coffee and a scone, when I saw her again. Lauren. She wasn't walking toward me, but I saw her the moment she stepped inside. She looked different, still Lauren, but the edge of panic that used to hide just behind her eyes was gone. She was calm, at ease. She stood by the counter, ordering something, her back to me. For a moment, I debated whether to leave, to just walk out and pretend I hadn't seen her. But instead, I stayed. I wasn't hiding anymore. Not from her. Not from anyone. She turned, spotting me instantly. There was no flinch in her posture, No awkward shuffle, just the same soft recognition. Her smile was small but genuine, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like I wasn't looking at her through a fog of betrayal. I was just seeing her. "Hey," she said, walking over. "Hey." She stood in front of me, hesitating. "I didn't expect to see you here. I come here sometimes," I said, motioning to the chair across from me. "Sit. You're already here." Lauren looked over her shoulder, then slid into the seat. Her hands were folded on the table, and she stared at them for a moment, gathering her thoughts. "I didn't want to interrupt your day," she started, "but I wanted to ask if we could talk." I took a slow sip of my coffee, giving her the space to continue. The silence wasn't uncomfortable, it was just the right kind of quiet for this moment. "I've been doing a lot of thinking," she said, "and I know this is probably the last thing you want to hear right now, but I wanted to apologize. I wanted you to know that I get it. What I did, how I hurt you." I set my cup down slowly, but didn't speak right away. It wasn't because I was angry. It wasn't because I didn't care. It was just because I needed this moment of silence. I needed to hear her words and decide if they were for me or for herself. I needed to feel the weight of them before I could respond. "You're apologizing for hurting me," I said finally, breaking the stillness, "but I think you're apologizing for getting caught." She blinked, clearly caught off guard by my bluntness. "What do you mean?" "Admitting something's wrong is only half the battle, Lauren. Apologizing for it is the second half. But for me, it's the way you keep trying to fix things without fixing them. You think an apology will be enough, but all it does is remind me that we've been through this dance before. You've said sorry before." She looked down at her hands again. "I know. I'm not asking you to trust me again. I'm not even asking for forgiveness. I'm just trying to be honest with you. I know what I did, and I know I can't change that." She met my gaze, steady this time. "I've been seeing a therapist. I'm trying to understand why I made the choices I did." I didn't respond immediately. I just nodded slowly, letting the words sit between us. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't a second chance. It was just the truth, raw and bare, the kind you can't walk away from. "I'm not the same person I was when I made those choices," she continued, "and I'm not asking for you to believe that. But I do think I deserve to change, to grow. Even if you never want to see me again." I was quiet for a long moment, staring at her, weighing her words. This wasn't about closure. This wasn't about healing. This wasn't even about forgiveness. It was about being honest for the first time. "And what do you want, Lauren?" I asked, finally breaking the silence. "What is it you think you deserve now?" She looked down, almost too afraid to say it. "I just want to know you're okay," she whispered. "I want you to be okay." I watched her for a while, taking in the vulnerability in her voice, the softness she hadn't allowed herself to show when she had the chance. And finally, I realized that in this moment, she wasn't asking for me to rebuild something that had fallen apart. She was just asking for peace. "I'm okay," I said softly. "I'm really okay." She exhaled, relieved in a way that made it clear this was the answer she needed. Not the answer she wanted, but the one she had to hear. Lauren stood up, her chair scraping across the floor. She didn't offer a hug. She didn't linger. Just a simple, quiet smile before she turned to leave. I watched her walk out of the cafe, this time with a different kind of clarity in my chest. I didn't feel angry. I didn't feel hurt. I just felt done. The next few days after Lauren left the cafe were oddly calm. I didn't feel a surge of relief, but there was something undeniably freeing in finally having the conversation that had been lingering over us for so long. We hadn't solved anything. We hadn't fixed anything. But for the first time, I felt like we were both speaking the same language, one that didn't need to be patched over with apologies or unspoken assumptions. I woke up the next morning without any lingering heaviness in my chest. No bitterness. No questions. Just the reality that, after months of turmoil, I was no longer tethered to her, to the lies, to the guilt. I didn't need to keep reliving every word or every betrayal. It was over. I didn't want to feel sorry for her. But there was still a part of me that hoped, somewhere in the depths of her, she could find a version of herself that could stop looking for things outside of herself to complete her. That day, I did something I hadn't done in months. I went for a run. It wasn't about distraction. It wasn't about escaping. It was about movement, about letting my body take me somewhere new, somewhere free from the weight of the past. As I jogged through the park, the rhythm of my feet hitting the pavement started to quiet my mind. It was like my body remembered what it was like to just exist without worrying about the future, without carrying the weight of other people's choices. It was a feeling I had forgotten, one I wasn't sure I'd ever feel again. By the time I finished my run, I was breathless, but I felt alive. I wasn't running from anything anymore. I was running towards something new. The days that followed were still quiet. There were moments of reflection, of course, moments where I'd catch myself thinking about what was lost, about the life I thought I'd built with Lauren. But those thoughts didn't drown me. They didn't consume me. They were just memories, not anchors. One evening, I decided to stop by Nate's place. He was in his backyard, grilling and drinking a beer, the usual setup. He saw me coming and waved. "You look like a man who's finally figured it out," he said, handing me a beer. I took it and sat down next to him, letting the cool breeze wash over me. "I think I have." "I'm proud of you, man," he said, clinking his bottle against mine. "You got the hardest part behind you." I nodded. "Yeah, but it's not over." "Not really." He raised an eyebrow. "You planning on staying in this limbo forever? Or are you going to move on at some point?" I took a long pull from my beer, considering the question. I don't know if moving on is the right way to put it. It's more like letting go. "Letting go," he repeated thoughtfully. "That sounds like the right move. No point dragging the past with you." I looked at my brother, at the way he sat back with ease, his life a little less complicated than mine. And for the first time in a while, I didn't feel resentment or anger toward him for it. He had his own struggles, his own battles. But for once, I wasn't trying to measure myself against anyone else's version of happiness. I had my own path now. The next week, Eva texted me again. "I'm free Saturday afternoon. Thought I'd ask if you wanted to grab lunch." I stared at the message for a moment before typing back. "Sure, that sounds good." When I met her at the small Italian place we talked about, there was no pretense, no nervousness, no expectation. Just two people who had been through enough to know that the simple things, like a good meal and a conversation that didn't need to be forced, were worth more than anything we'd been through before. "I'm glad you said yes," she said, sitting down across from me. "I know we don't know each other that well, but I figured it'd be nice to have someone to talk to who's not tangled in all that other stuff." "Yeah, me too," I replied. "It's easy to forget what it feels like to just be normal around someone." She laughed. "It's definitely a change of pace, right?" I smiled, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I wasn't thinking about my past. I wasn't wondering if I was making a mistake or if I should be more cautious. I was simply enjoying the present. We talked for hours about everything and nothing, about our childhoods, our work, our favorite places to travel. And as we talked, I started to realize something. I didn't need to go back to where I came from to find happiness. I didn't need to rebuild what had fallen apart. I just needed to be. As the sun set outside, I looked at Eva and saw something different in her eyes. No pressure, no expectations, just a connection. Maybe it was just a moment. Maybe it was the beginning of something more. But for once, I wasn't thinking about the future. I was just enjoying the here and now. When we parted ways, I felt lighter. Not because of what might happen with Eva, but because I had finally started to accept that the past was gone. And that was okay. I didn't need her to come back. I didn't need to chase her. I didn't need to make her see what I could offer. I was enough, just as I was. And that was the last thing I needed to realize.